I'm Teri Hart, and this is the heart of it all. Since we began this podcast all about the realities of caregiving back in October, there's probably one word that has been used in every single episode: burnout. When a word is used so often, it can sometimes lose meaning. Today on the heart of it all, we are giving caregiver burnout the attention it deserves. And we're returning to our roots with our very first guest, Alyson Schafer. Hi there, I'm Teri Hart, your host each and every week for this podcast about caregiving, the heart of it all. This episode is brought to you by Capital Direct. If caregiving is overwhelming you, finding some financial flexibility could be the answer. Capital Direct's Flexi Line is structured to allow you to borrow money from your home's equity and pay it back when the time is right. A Flexi Line can help support you and your family in moments where they need you the most. Visit capitaldirect.ca to find out more. At the end of 2025, the Ontario Caregiver Organization's annual Spotlight report said that 68% of Ontario caregivers have reached their breaking point. The ramifications of this are massive, from reducing their caregiving to taking their loved ones to ERs so that they can have a break. And 67% anticipate their roles are only going to get harder. Alyson Schafer is an internationally acclaimed parenting expert, speaker, best-selling author, and media personality. And what I know is her parenting expertise lends itself seamlessly to many challenges caregivers face. Armed with years of research and clinical experience, Alyson is able to break down complex ideas and present them in ways that are easy for people to understand and, more importantly, implement. Alyson, thank you so much for being back on the heart of it all.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all you're doing in this topic area. So needed.
Well, I mean, I said in the intro that burnout is probably the word that we've used most often, other than caregiving, in this podcast. So let's start with the definition. What is burnout?
So it's a great question because I don't think that it has like an official diagnose, like a agreed upon definition amongst medical practitioners. So I think we throw around words like caregiver fatigue and compassion fatigue and burnout, and we use those sort of interchangeably. So the way that I understand burnout, if I wanted to like represent it to the people that I was talking about and share with your audience, is burnout is about it's chronic depletion. If you don't have the chronic part and if you don't have the depletion part, I don't think you're going to get to what I would qualify as the burnout qualities. And then you see it across multiple paradigms. So you're going to see it in your psychology, your mental health. You're going to see it in your physiology. You're going to see it in your social interactions. It's going to permeate multiple modes. So when I think of burnout, that's the definition or the descriptor that I would say.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you because I'm not sure, and I don't think I'm the only one. I hope I'm not the only one. What is chronic? Does chronic mean there's no end to it?
It's interesting. Again, like let's say, for example, in the diagnostic statistical manual, if you were going to diagnose someone for depression, they would say so many days unremitting up to 2 weeks or something. And and they really define the timeline. And so I don't have a timeline that says, if you've been doing this for 3 months or you've been doing this for, but I would say the difference between chronic and acute is like, are you just grinding? So what is that for you? What is that for your situation? I want to differentiate it from acute, which is like all of us have had a situation where it's like, oh my goodness, I need to take a break. I really like put the pedal to the metal in the last couple of weeks, or, bringing home that newborn baby. I really needed to catch up on my sleep, or, I have a parent home from a surgery and they really needed a lot of extra care. But there's this idea that it will be remitting, that you will get a break, that it will bounce back. And I think that the feeling of chronic is like over time without knowing, because it's the problem with caregiving. You get very inaccurate or very cushioned answers over, well, how long is this going to take? And how long is it going to be like that? And the people who want to support you don't want to lie to you, but they really don't know. I mean, they really don't know. So they're kind of like, oh, it could be days, could be months, you know? So I think I don't know if there's like a magic number that says I could do this for 3 months, but I couldn't do it for 6, or I could do it for 6, but I'm on year 3. I'm on year 3 and I thought I was coming for 3 weeks. So yeah,
Who knows?
that's, that's the reality of being unaware and not knowing life is ambiguous, and we just have to like do what life calls for.
Right. I think also I'm going to add to that because I think, well, I'm going to add two things. It's different for everybody. This is 100% such an individual thing when somebody could experience burnout. Your burnout could be way after what mine is, and depending on what kind of caregiving you're giving. I will also say that I think it's also so hard because I think a lot of people kind of talk themselves out of their own feelings when they're caregiving. The old, it's not about me. This person needs me more than I need to be concerned about myself. So they kind of gaslight themselves.
Oh, I would put that in the definition, Teri. So one of the things about burnout is the people that are the highest susceptible people to experience burnout are people who are very close to the subject matter. Love will blind you. I mean, think about it. Let's step outside of caregiving. Let's say that you are, for example, the CEO of an NGO that is looking after raising money for starving people somewhere, and because you love the cause, you are so in it, you're so deep, your heart is so big, your care is so strong, and you're giving and giving and giving, and you're so passionate, and it blinds you. And I think that's very much the same as people that are in love relationships and their family, and you're caring for someone who's ill, or you're caring for a child who needs you. And it is our love and our feeling of love, and I don't want to say dutifulness, but like that, the humanity piece, when it becomes our biggest passion, we are, and I think listeners need to know this, we're at most risk for missing the signals that we are going into burnout, because we have this secondary, tertiary gas tank that is based on our love that makes us miss a lot of the signs that we're kind of going down into the zone. We miss it.
So what are those early signs? What are signs of burnout that people might be missing because of that love factor, because of that commitment factor, because of that personal gaslighting of how they're really feeling? What should we be looking for?
So some of it, again, comes down to functioning. Things like poor memory, brain fog. I know with me, in fact, I went and had my hearing, I had my brain scanned and my ears tested because I could not believe that, my kids would say, here are the keys. And I'd go, where do we pee? And they're like, Mom, I was like, my hearing was distorted. I had no short-term memory. I remember crying because I couldn't find my keys. And I would think, like, what's going on? I thought for sure my brain, I thought, oh my gosh, on top of having to care for my dying father, that my children were going to have to, mom's got a brain tumor or something. And my doctor said, I think it's just caregiver stress. Like, let's just get you tested to make sure. And I passed with flying colors. There was nothing going on. But on the outside world, my functioning in terms of my brain was absolutely not there. I think another big one is isolation. You start pulling back because knowing it or not, there is sort of a self-preservation where it's like, I can't really take on more. So no, I'm not going to go say yes to that dinner invitation. No, I'm not going to go add another thing. I just want recovery time. And the next thing you realize, I'm actually kind of like holed up here. You realize you're kind of like doing like nothing.
And I think that for some people that might sound counterintuitive, but one of the things I learned from a previous episode when we had journalist Marnie Jackson on talking about living with Parkinson's was she talked about spending social equity. And so what she taught me was even those dinners that you might feel as the person adjacent to a caregiver, oh, this will help them. We'll have them over for dinner. We'll give them respite. And really, that's actually requiring more or seemingly taking more from the reserves of a caregiver. I thought that was a really interesting point that Marnie brought up in that episode.
And I'm sure that it's also to your point about not trying to write one prescription for all people's situations, because I think that there are people that would get replenished by going out or whatever. Other people that would get replenished from just staying at home and just collapsing with the book and not needing to put on a social face at all. I can see it going both ways. But I will tell you that you need to know yourself and don't be polite and feel comfortable in saying I decline, and also for your friends to have a sense of knowing what you do and don't need. And I think that one of the problems that comes with caregiving is we often say, how can I help? What would be good? How can I support you? And you're asking somebody who's already burnt out. So, if you had the brain like mine, I can't remember where my keys are. I can't even hear a sentence without distortions. And now you want me to make a plan for how you're going to look after me? It's like, I can't even figure out how to put toast in the toaster for me right now. I need you to swoop in and hopefully know me well enough from our, relationship prior to this burnout situation happening to know, intuitively, and maybe you'll get it wrong, but make your best stab at saying, let's just try this and see how it lands. And, it takes one more burden. I don't want to have to organize the meal train from all the people at the church. Like on top of everything else, now I need to organize people how to look after me. It would be nice if people just said, hey, I just left something on your doorstep. Eat it or don't eat it. But like, you didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to approve it, like it, whatever. Done for you. No thinking.
Yeah, I think that has come up. The specificity with which we offer help to caregivers is so crucial to the actual success of it. This broad idea of like, I don't know what to do. What should I do? That is like, no, you come prepared with a solution, an offer, and an execution.
And people have to remember it can look so small and inconsequential. So it might be they're like, well, how could I possibly help if they're looking after their dying father? And the thing that you come forward with is, can I water your roses? Can I go scrape your car off? It can be so small and specific, as you say. It's like, oh, that would actually really help in the grander scheme of everything I'm juggling. You don't have to juggle the cancer ball. You don't have to come with me to the hospital. You don't have to come hold my hand while I cry. I just need to get on with like managing some of life tasks.
I think it's interesting, and I think we both are in agreement that, self-preservation can also mean that you're lying to yourself about how burnt out you might be. So that takes it to that kind of the people who love you, if you are primary caregiver, what are some of the things that loved ones can look for in a primary caregiver to go like, maybe not flashing red light, but at least look for that amber light of like, we could be approaching some burnout here. What are some behaviors that might indicate that in a primary caregiver?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm just sort of thinking about, how much do people know when the Titanic is sinking? you know, and to your point, chances are, if you're the captain of your own life in a burnout situation, you're probably the last one to know. So I would say for the other people to first of all, maybe just have an understanding of the social awareness of what would be the gravitas of the situation. Like, yeah, you know what? It's hard when someone's going through chemo. You know what? It's really hard when you've got a kid that just got a diagnosis. You know what? It's really hard when your father is doing triple pipe. Like, just be aware that in and of itself, that you've got a friend that is under stress. I think just like that needs to be on your alert. And then I think it's amazing how many times the people that I check in with say how meaningful it was, just the little touch points. But these little, like, how are you doing? Remembering that today was the day of the operation. How did it go? because what it says is that you're on my mind and you're important to me. So I think that like just having it on your radar that someone's going through a hardship and staying in closer contact with them with these little touch points, no big obligations, don't need to reply. I often say that, no need to reply, just want you to know you're on my mind. I do that with a lot of friends. So paying attention to who's in stressful situations, doing that closer kind of that the tribe is coming around me, the tribe is coming close around me. And then watching that person to see, what would be like a change in base behavior. And so if you find somebody who is more weepy, or if you find somebody who normally checks in and they haven't checked in, if you do drop in and you sort of like look around the house and you're like, I don't think they're keeping up, you can kind of tell, like, I'm a bit of a neat freak. And it's kind of like, if my kids came in, they'd be like, I don't think mom's holding it together, man. Like, she doesn't usually have her house like this. Went into her bedroom. She's still got, the laundry hasn't been done in 3 days. So, if you're checking in, you're kind of eyes on the ground, your people on the ground, you can kind of see, how they're kind of functioning. So, but I think it's an awareness piece that you're looking for it in the first place. So if you don't have it on your radar that it's part of your caregiving to the caregiver, right? The community of somebody who's caregiving, to say, I need to be on, 3-point alert to see how they are managing. You'll notice it. Your friends. You'll start to see the change.
Yeah. I said in the intro that it's so nice to have you back. You are our very first guest on The Heart of It All. And we talked about in that first episode, which remains one of our most popular episodes, talking about how people spend a long, long time becoming an expert on parenting, and then they have to become an expert on their parents. And that really resonated with a lot of people. So I'm wondering, kind of taking that philosophy, what people can relate to in terms of, I think, you talked about bringing that newborn baby home, and a lot of parents experience burnout at different times in their parenting journey. How does burnout for caring for aging parents resemble or differ from the experience of burnout for parents caring for children?
It's a great question. And I think it goes back a little bit to what I was saying about the love factor. Like, God forbid we love and we're passionate. Because we're never going to step down from these roles. I think that when we are experiencing burnout from being the parent of a child, and again, we're using the general example of a newborn who maybe cries or is colicky or whatever. But just, you have to remember there's parents who have kids in the NICU, kids that have come home that are not coming home, that they might know that this is going to be a long road, a change in expectation. Your whole paradigm of what you thought parenting was going to be is kind of blown up in your face. So it's not just like the tired mom, who's trying to figure out a baby that's breastfeeding and up every 3 hours. Like, there's a whole range around just becoming a new mother and everything that's involved in that. With parents, the thing is that they've always been our protector. And so suddenly this person who's supposed to care for you, you're now caring for. And that's really flipping the role expectation. So you become a new parent and you go from being, in a partnership and a coupleship, and now you're in this new role of parent and you've got this whole life that's depending on you, and you're unprepared and you don't have skills and you don't know what you're doing, but another dependent life relies on you, and it's kind of all on you, and it's all new, and people mostly like to feel competent. And then we have the situation where our parents switch and now we're parenting them, and that's all new because I was used to being the child. I was used to being the one. You looked after me. I didn't look after you. I didn't have to be the strong one. You were the one that talked me down when I had a bad day. So in both of those examples, we're in these strong love relationships where the role has dramatically switched without any training, preparation, this wanting to take high responsibility with very low agency and low skills training. And that really is very hard on people because we want to do right, do good by the people we love.
And it brings up so many emotions. so many emotions that maybe make you feel not proud of yourself, that maybe those emotions, aside from being tired and the extra doctor's appointments or the extra physical work, I think that there is an emotional component of these feelings that contribute to burnout.
Because to your point, we sort of have said that we're more likely to be pulled into burnout by this depth of our connection and our love. So then what happens when you have both that and resentment? Because this is now eating away at your life. Anger, because you are had to make all these life changes and this isn't what you signed up for. And guilt. I thought I was a better person than this. I didn't know, in my deepest dreams, I'm waking up wishing I could take a pillow and smother it on my dad's face. What does that mean? Am I a horrible person? Am I a terrible person? The fact that this baby that's screaming that we just want to like hand off and sort of say, I don't think I was meant to be a mother. How can I have ill will towards a child that's 6 weeks old? They haven't even been on the planet long. And I have this. So I think that as these emotions come up and then as we reflect on what those emotions are, we can really add to the burden of how awful we're feeling. And it just pushes us further down into the spiral of a burnout by saying it was already bad enough. And now I have this collection of emotions that I don't know how to process. I don't have time to process them. I feel awful that I'm holding them on top of every other thing that I'm doing. And it's an added weight to the entire equation.
So I've always believed, I've not always acted on it successfully, Alyson, but I've always believed that whatever emotion I'm feeling, if I don't express it honestly, it's going to come out in some other way. And so I feel like with all those feelings that I think every caregiver does experience, those frustration, anger, resentment, and then thinking negatively about themselves for having those emotions, I think that that really does feed into that burnout when they're not expressing them. So, how does somebody deal with those emotions? How can somebody express those emotions in a way that doesn't drive you down the burnout path, but drives you down a path of, truth and fairness and grace to yourself?
Yeah, so I want to answer that, but I just want to step back one more statement to say, like, part of the frustration, I think, when the emotions come up is like, how can one speak poorly of the dying? How can one speak poorly of the little infant? Do you know what I mean? It's almost like an unfair fight. It's like there's like our moral compass is really upset. We tend to not be honest. We tend not to express. We're kind of like, I don't want that to be their last memory, or this is a child. They can't express themselves. So I think if we were in an adult to adult, two healthy people relationship, I think we would express and we would work through and we would metabolize and we would come to a verbal conclusion about where our discord happened. And we would have all kinds of resources as two high functioning adults. And that doesn't happen in parenting because the kids don't have prefrontal cortexes and they don't have verbal abilities and it's not fair if someone's incapacitated because they're at the end of life, right? So we have to do all the carrying of that. And yet those emotions still show up. And so I think that there's a couple things in terms of like a take forward for listeners to say, like, well, so what do we do with all those emotions that come up? So one is to say, do not shame yourself. There is no bad, wrong emotion. All emotions, they're all just information. They're data points, they're information. They're a way of getting to know yourself. They're a way of getting deeper into your mind. There's no bad emotion. They're all there for a reason. And to quiet the rest, and this is why like mindfulness meditation or journaling are really helpful, because what it does is it allows you to kind of make space for sitting down and looking deeper and maybe getting to like kind of peeling the onion, getting to like the next level, next level, next level. If you come with a curiosity and gentle, compassionate mindset about yourself, like, what is it about that I'm so angry? Why is this making me so angry? And you might very well find that your answer is something that you then could take action on. It could be, why I'm really angry? Because I never said X, Y, and Z, that I might need to call my brother and say, I have been doing all the caregiving. I really am starting to get angry about this and I can't, it's really bubbling up now. I need you to take more days of the week. To your point about being specific, not saying, can you help more? Saying, could you come on Monday and Wednesday and do the pill dispensing and actually delegate a job, right? As opposed to ruminating about, why I'm so angry. Or maybe it's, I'm angry because you're dying and I never heard you say that you love me and that you're proud of me. Well, couldn't you turn that into an opportunity to say, you know, I really would love to have an opportunity to hear about, what you thought about my childhood and who I became as a person. I never really had an opportunity to kind of feel that. And I don't want to miss that opportunity in this time that we're trying to measure.
I love this idea, Alyson. I love this idea of asking yourself that question of why am I so angry? Why am I resentful? And that giving you an opportunity to move that emotion in one direction or another. Like, I love it so much.
So, emotions are kind of like the fuel in the gas tank that help us drive in a certain direction. And so, if you can just check in and say, here is this gas tank. What direction is it trying to move me towards? And then not doing it from the emotional, dysregulated state, but from like a conscious, well thought out peace about what needs to happen for you around that emotion. So it's big. It's a big opportunity for self-inquiry that can really guide you towards making some different decisions around things that you would like to do, actions and behaviors that you would like to take.
I love this is why you're our first repeat guest on the Heart of It All, because I'm telling you, that is actionable. That is something that moves us forward and gives people a sense of control in a situation that can feel so much out of their control. We hear often the buzzword boundaries, establish boundaries. Boundaries are important in life. Is it possible to have boundaries in a caregiving role?
Oh, I don't think that there is a healthy relationship without boundaries. I think it's maybe people just have a nervous reaction to the word boundary, like as if they hear it as like a hard no or a full stop. Like I think maybe they hear it a bit harsh.
Okay.
But boundaries are really about understanding where your world begins and ends and where the other person's world begins and ends, and just getting very clear. And much to your point about what's in our control and what's not in our control, right? Like that's the whole Alcoholics Anonymous. What can we control? What can't we control? The wisdom to know the difference. And it's very much the same in our human relationships, which is about looking after us and knowing where do I begin and where do I end and how I'm willing to be treated and what I am willing to do so that I have an end stop to preserve my own self-respect. I think boundaries should be something that people get excited about because it's a little bit, I mean, maybe if I'm just using a metaphor here, imagine if I sat down to a board game and I just opened up a board and threw down some dice and some game players and some whatever, and I gave you no rules of the game. And I'm just like, have at it. Like everybody wants to win the game of life. Everybody wants to they want to understand expectations and norms and how to show up so that they're being appropriate and they don't want to step on toes. And so you can't do that without having some understanding. And so to be able to say, I have a boundary. So in the parenting case, I know that there are mothers who say, my boundary is I am not willing to breastfeed. I'm just going to have a bottle fed baby. Judge me or don't judge me. But that's not in my realm. I'm not doing that. And that's a great boundary to know. And nobody should judge that boundary. And it might be you're looking after an elder person and you're like, I was good up until bathing and toileting. And now we need to have a care worker come into the home because I'm not willing to do that. The next person might say, you know what? I was okay with that. That was fine. So it's not like you can assign boundaries to other people, but you have to be honest about what yours are.
And I think that leads us directly to an issue that I'm super sensitive about it. is the self-care buzzword in terms of what self-care is. It drives me a little bit bonkers because I think that when I was in a position of caregiving for my dad, there were people who would have ideas around self-care like, "Oh, you should go and get a blowout for your hair." And it's like, not only is that so far from what I want to do or what feels like caring for myself, but I think that self-care can be out of the realm of actually what matters. So, and you and I kind of talked a little bit about that in our first conversation about becoming an expert on your parents and self-care. Let's talk about that phrase of self-care and how do you think we can suggest an alternative, something else other than that kind of I find it trite, Allison. Am I just being judgy?
No, listen, I am with you because I've gotten very careful about how I talk about self-care because, do I have a plan for my self-care? Yeah, I think it's about a 5-year plan. Like, I think my 5-year plan is that when this is all said and done, I will get back on my feet. And right now I'm just in an arid desert carrying a very heavy pack. And I'm just a strong person who's just gonna carry the load, you know? So, so the whole like, well, at 4 o'clock, shouldn't you go down and, work out at the gym and I mean, I have a few things, but like even just, exercise and eat right. And I'm like, in what world were you hanging out at the hospital? I mean, I sat and emerged for 4 days in a row. I was eating nothing but Tim Hortons because it was the only food in the lobby open at 4 o'clock in the morning. I burnt a hole in my stomach from drinking nothing but coffee for 4 months. Like, don't tell me about we should exercise. I'm like, I can't go exercise. They're on a fall alert. If they go to the bathroom, they can break their neck. Like, so it's like, yeah, I'll get back to self. I'll get back to that at some point, but I'm not doing it like in the get up in the morning and have your vitamin. Do, 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 do. I'm like, no, it does sound trite. It does sound like, have you stepped into my world?
Right.
And even reaching out to my friends, I think about like trying to reach out on the phone. I'm not going to call behind little pulled curtains in the emergency room. I couldn't get cell service over here. They're all really great ideas until you step into somebody's reality. And so I don't want to be trite about that. I will say that the whole time I was paying attention, going like, not good, not good, not good. I could feel it, and I still know that I have like big recovery and a long journey still to go. So it's always on my mind. But I'm going back to the compassion piece. Like I got my kids. We're sharing the load. We're checking in on each other. It could be better. But there's something about saying I can't do more than this right now. Like I can't do more than this right now, and that's okay. I'm still hanging in.
So you bring up load, and I think that that's a really, really great word to use because it does feel like a load when you are caregiving. And I'm wondering how you can communicate to family members or just your community members who may not fully understand what that load is. What's some language for people, Allison, around if people don't get even professionally, even to your boss maybe, about what this caregiving experience could be for you and how it's impacting other aspects of your life?
It's kind of like saying I am not of my full is the word faculty a good word? I don't have my full faculties. It's like I'm in a play and there is now a backdrop and I am living in the backdrop of caregiving, and the number of tabs open in my brain that are available are now completely overwhelmed because now I'm dealing with hospitals and doctors, like the number of tabs that are open around so many topics that I didn't have before. It's like I now have 3 jobs and I work for you full time and you're paying me full time. I get that. But I'm going to show up as best I can, but I'm not of my full faculty. I know for me, like the concentration, numbing, I mean, I was never one to do like solitaire, but that's all I could do because a 7 goes on an 8 and a 6 goes on a 7. Reading books, I don't think people understand. You know how hard it is to read when you're stressed, when you're caregiving? Reading a paragraph? Like reading a book on caregiving, forget it. You're not reading a book on caregiving. I can hardly listen to a podcast on caregiving. It's amazing how you are really in survival mode and you're just kind of hoping people understand that you are going to limp along. And thank God I had a team where I said, guess what? I need you guys to like just keep me in the game, cover my back, hold me up, so that I don't completely have to disappear. But I mean, and they did, and they understood it. But, from a functioning point of view, it's not like you're being lazy. It's not like you're using it as an alibi or an excuse. It's an inability. And yet you still kind of need to keep grounded and do something other. You still need to bring in a paycheck or that's another stress, right?
Yeah, I love the idea of, and again, this is why I love talking to you so much, because you really are able to distill something down to its truth. I have a lot more tabs open. There is a lot more that my life outside of this job or my life outside of this current relationship is requiring of me. I need you to understand that. Like, that is a really, really transparent, vulnerable, and honest, without getting into nitty-gritty details that are nobody's business.
I will tell you something. I work with a lot of companies, with their HR departments because I do webinars and things like that in corporations. And my daughter actually works in HR, and they will all tell you they don't want to lose employees. They want to support you. It is more that the employees are nervous about coming forward to say, and again, this could be caregiving because, oh my God, my mother's just had a stroke and whatever, we got to figure out some care facilities for her. I got to go look at things. But it could also be you have a teenager who's just had a suicide attempt and, and now you're suddenly kind of on suicide alert or whatever. People don't want to bring that forward to the HR department that you're in a different phase of your life around some of these. Like, you're a human being, you're embedded in a family, you're going to have these things that call on you. But the HR people say, we would have wanted to know. We don't be afraid. Like, don't be scared that we're going to judge you or think differently or that you're going to, get removed. They mostly want to help support you, because if you invest in an employee, that's way better for a company to have happy employees that get supported throughout. And so I think it's our own fear about letting them know that there's a change in our status. And maybe we need to hand off a few of our projects, and maybe we need to do some job share with somebody else. They'd way rather work creatively with that than to just have you implode without saying anything.
What happens if burnout is unaddressed for too long?
People will get sick. Like, you will get adrenal failure. You will have like a bigger mental collapse. It's going to take more psychotherapy to kind of come back from. Probably things that could be small t or large t traumas. It will take longer to make that recovery if we don't make some point of interception, for sure. Yeah. It is a biological phenomena of just flooding your body with stress hormones, right? So like just that alone.
So how can people think about caregiving for somebody else without losing themselves? Without, that thing that you said earlier about, who am I outside of this? Where do I begin and where does something else end in terms of that boundary part? How can people think about caregiving without losing themselves?
Well, I think it comes down to being bravely honest with yourself about what you can manage, and bravely honest about that. Even though we said, wouldn't it be nicer if other people brought us help as opposed to us asking for help? You have to save a little bit of bandwidth for strategy. And that's what's keeping my family alive, right? Like, we're shouldering this, it's me and my 2 daughters looking after their dad. And we have a very systematized way of making sure There's times when like we tag team off from each other because we've got work things or people need to travel or, whatever. But there's kind of a general schedule of like who's going to be point of care and who's doing medicines and and so it isn't just that it's the amount of hours we're doing the jobs. It's the psychology of feeling like none of us are doing this alone, that I'm part of a team, that we have a system in place, that nobody is going down. We're all watching out for each other. We're all on top of this. And so I think in the early days, before the burnout starts to kind of chew you down, to start thinking about get your village. And if you're the people that are around that person, you don't think that they've started getting their village in order, jump in and say, let's get your village organized. Let's get your village organized. Because that I think is really the difference for human beings. We say there's no problem so great if it's a common problem. And that applies to caregiving.
What suggestion can you make to people who could be in a situation where siblings or whoever is part of their community maybe isn't being as responsive as the primary person needs them to be?
So there's a wonderful woman who created a company called Essential Conversations, because this is so common that these family big topics, and often caregiving for parents and disagreements about that. I think he should go in a home and I don't think he's ready yet. And well, I'm the one that's doing all the cooking of the meals and taking them over, and you live in a different town, but you don't do anything, but you can't believe how much it stirs up sibling issues. And so the point of her creating this essential conversation product and process or whatever is really about the idea, if we don't talk, this is just going to get worse and fester. And so it's really deciding, do you need a mediator? I mean, she's obviously got a product for that, but whether that mediator is somebody outside the family, whether that is a counselor, whether that is, one of the other spouse's wives who just knows everybody, that says, hey, you know what? Like, let's sit down and talk about how we're going to look after Uncle Pat or whatever. And there's just somebody who each person in the family seems to be able to have the ear for or whatever. Time is not going to solve things. It's like it's got to get like a little bit more conflictual before it gets better, because you got to say some hard things. And people that are conflict avoidant and they don't want to stir the pot and they don't want to kick up the sibling rivalry from back when you were in grade 12 and you took the swimming championship and you can't believe what gets dredged up when you start talking with siblings. But if you don't address it, it won't resolve. And so it's about, what do you need to get in place to support you having that conversation? And if you need a mediator, you can retain one.
If a caregiver is listening to this right now and is feeling particularly depleted, feeling burnt out, that's what we're talking about this episode, caregiver burnout. What would you suggest to them, Alyson?
One, you're not alone. What you're feeling is not failure. What you're feeling doesn't mean that a better person or somebody else had more capacity and you didn't, and that somehow you're letting someone down or letting yourself down or letting the person you're caring for down. This is part of loving deeply. It's it's the price we pay for loving deeply, And that to get the nourishment for your soul back is probably through connecting to other people that are in either a shared experience or share what you're going through, meaning somebody else who's also helping doing the care duties. That might be the nurse at the hospital. That, it might be that you end up grabbing a coffee with the person who's doing the night shift, at the home, and because they're living with this 24/7. But I think it's, to your point, it can be patronizing to listen to people that are outside the situation give advice. So who's inside the situation? Who would most understand what you're going through? Because I think that is the piece we need to feel, that someone's like, oh, me too. Oh, somebody who gets it, somebody who gets me. And that might be an online community. That, like I said, it might be some of the people that work at the hospital or the long-term care facility or the treatment centers or a death doula or a mediator, but somebody where you have the experience that this isn't just you uniquely going through this. And I think, that sharing of stories. And if you can't find that community, because I really believe, like I said, everything is doable if it's done in community. And the more people in community that have a shared experience with you, the better. Those are my biggest takeaways. But if you need to like just vent, release, get things out, and you don't have that person to talk to, at least journal. We know from research that even just expressing things in writing or expressing them in now we have recorded notes. You talk into your phone, saying it, writing it, expressing it is a way of processing our emotions, and it does really help. And then just compassion, 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 compassion. There's no wrong feelings. There's no failure. There is no disappointment. Just really holding yourself with great love.
Feelings are just information. I love that.
For us to get curious about. It's a great way to learn more about yourself. Yeah.
Truly. I think this might dovetail a little bit to what you just suggested, but just in closing, how do you think we can better support caregivers?
Look for them, respect them. It's a lot of quiet little caregivers out there. So, whether that's just taking a box of Timbits and leaving it on the nurse's station, or whether that is checking in on a friend and saying, hey, you know what, I got your dog for the week or whatever. So I think being aware, I think is and just deciding that you've decided it's a priority, that you want to be a supporter of people who need support. And I think once you open your eyes, then you start to see more clearly those, when your reality changes, you start seeing more evidence of those people out there. Being the proactive one to see what could be helpful here, even if you get it wrong. Take the initiative. Take the initiative, even if you get it wrong, because it's not the getting it right that's going to matter. It's going to be that feeling. Someone cleaned my car. Someone sent me a text message. Somebody dropped a note in my mailbox. It's the feeling that it's that safety net of community that you're going to experience. It's a feeling. It's more than the doing. It's a feeling.
Yeah,
So anything you do can help.
absolutely. Community is going to save us all. It's the only thing that will. Alyson Schafer, thank you. Nice to have you back. Nice to see your face. And thank you for all your support of this podcast. We really, really do appreciate you.
So great to be invited back. Thank you. Anytime, any topic. You're doing great work out there. I really appreciate it. Always a great conversation, Teri.
Oh, Alyson is such a treasure, and we are so lucky to have her here on The Heart of It All. Please remember to like, comment, and share this episode. We are so grateful for your support. Thanks to the support of our sponsor. I am grateful for the support of my co-producers at 6 of 1 Digital, Jess and Carrie. Next week, we welcome legend Jeannie Becker to the pod to talk about her experience of receiving care when she was going through treatment for breast cancer. Make sure you're following so you don't miss an episode of The Heart of It All. Thanks so much for listening, and please take care. This week's movie recommendation is the Oscar-nominated If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. Rose Byrne won a Golden Globe and was Oscar-nominated for her performance caring for her child. This is a gut punch of a movie. It's heart-wrenching and doesn't sugarcoat the realities of how taxing caregiving truly is. Yep, it's a tough watch, but it's worthwhile and will make all caregivers feel seen for their hardest days.